What's up, Growth Nation? Welcome back to Scale or Die, the show where we uncover proven growth strategies from CEOs and growth experts behind some of the world's fastest growing startups. I'm your host, Dave Rogenmoser, and today I've got a new friend with me, Jonathan Kim, CEO of Appcues, CEO and founder, I should say, of Appcues. And if you don't know, Appcues is a fast-growing company up in Boston, and they help other companies create really beautiful and delightful onboarding flows for their users, and it works really, really well. We're customers ourselves. And before that, Jonathan spent a couple years at Hubspot, and then before that was at Performable, which was the company founded by David Cancel, who was guest number one on Scale or Die. So Jonathan, welcome to the show, man. I'm honestly super pumped to have you here.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, so we've been customers, for a while now. We were just talking before this. We relaunched our Appcues just this morning. So love the product, and I think as we started to look into the company behind the product, we really liked what you guys are building as a company. We felt like we kind of had the same ethos and the same culture and the same idea behind what we were trying to do with creating great products for people. But I'm excited to dig into that. And I guess I'm just curious, from your perspective, what is Appcues? How do you describe it? And then maybe where are you at today as far as some key metrics that you guys track?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a great question because the story has evolved a lot. The product has evolved a lot over time. We started out just trying to solve the problem of new user onboarding, primarily for B2B software products. And today we describe ourselves really differently. We describe ourselves as really this experience layer that sits on top of your product and helps you grow your business by creating these amazing user experiences. And the way that we came to that vision or came to that point was in building this product for onboarding, saw the way that people were hacking the product. They were using it for feature announcements. They were putting surveys in there. And these people were non-technical, right? So when we talked to them, their biggest benefit to it just made them feel empowered, right? It made them feel like they were finally welcome within the product. And that's how we really believe that companies create great products.
Interesting. And so you were just watching. Well, here's a question. I've seen you talk about how excited you are about user onboarding. And I'm just curious, are you really actually passionate about user onboarding? Or is that just kind of the thing that allows you to do what you're passionate about and build a company and build great products and do that? And
Yeah, it's funny. I would say the evidence that I go back to is the story of how I left HubSpot and started Appcues was, David Cancel comes over to my desk and he's like, "Hey man, I've been seeing you and you're either at 110% and you're super passionate about something, or you're just not passionate at all. And for the past couple of weeks, you've been not passionate." And so we caught up a little later, and I started talking about this thing. I was like, "Oh man, HubSpot, we've got this huge problem around user onboarding, and check out this landing page I built, and it could be a real product." And he said, "The way you light up about that, that's what you're really passionate about." He's like, "You should go do that." And I said, "Okay, I guess you're right." It's I guess I quit today, and I just kind of quit on the spot because I was so passionate about the problem. But I think as an entrepreneur, I've started to discover that I can get passionate about problems that are really close to me and that I feel every day. And so dogfooding our own products, right? Having to onboard customers, get them to adopt new features, collect NPS survey results. Those are all things that we actively feel. And so I can get really passionate about them.
Gotcha. So really passionate about solving problems, happen to stumble upon a really big problem that you knew how to solve, and that gets you fired up.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is Appcues today? How many people do you guys have? How many customers, if you share those numbers? Maybe if you share, any revenue numbers, where are you guys kind of at?
Yeah, so we're just over 1,000 customers, just under 70 employees, and we're tracking to basically double this year in revenue, which will be pretty exciting for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you raised a Series A not too long ago, or a year ago?
Yeah, back in August.
Okay, cool. And how long has the company been around?
Just over 5 years now. Yeah, I left HubSpot technically at the end of 2013.
Okay.
So just over 5.
Okay, very cool, man. Okay, so I want to talk about growth. I want to go back to, so you leave HubSpot, you build the product. How long does it take to build the product? And then how did you kind of launch into the world?
Yeah, so again, another David Cancel influence, I'm a huge believer in charging money for a product before you build it and charging money from day one. And so after leaving HubSpot, I did a lot of consulting just to kind of see if I could build the product or be the product. and then I started pitching. I had this animated GIF that I made out of like HTML and CSS, and I recorded it and made an animated GIF, which I can send you. It's kind of funny how simple it was. And I pitched it to a company in Boston called Nanigans. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I'm going to build it. And they're like, yeah, we could use that tomorrow. I was like, we'll pay for it. And at the time I was like, okay, cool. Like $45 a month seems like a fair price. I got them to pay $45 a month via check on like New Year's Eve. And then I had to build the product because it didn't actually exist. It took me about 3 weeks to build like the first version, which was our SDK, a web application to edit stuff. And then it kind of got rolling from there. I mean, product development now, I think we're taking on bigger and bigger challenges, and there's also just a lot at stake now, and so we have to be a lot more careful.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I mean, software is so easy to create, especially now. It's like it gets easier every day.
And are you an engineer?
I actually have a degree in journalism.
Okay.
I taught myself how to code back in to pay for school, and then I did that at HubSpot.
Okay. Cool. But you were the one who created the very first version.
Yeah. I wrote most of the code until 2015,
okay.
Something like that.
Okay. Very cool. And so you launch it there. What does growth look like past that? Maybe like what were some of the like early growth channels or growth channel that you had that really started to get adoption?
Yeah. So day one started a blog, right? Actually, we started this thing called the User Onboarding Academy, which was it's just like an evergreen series of content. But really, there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge around how to do great user onboarding at the time. And so that was really the pillar of our like education strategy, which our mission, right, is to help teams create products their users love. And there are multiple ways that we do that. And so one of those channels was the Onboarding Academy and content. Another one of those was User Test Fest, which used to be called Drunk User Testing back in the day. We started that really early. I think we were 5 employees when we started that.
That's awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah, we've done 9 of them now.
We hosted one in our office here in Proof with you guys, which was awesome.
Yeah, our inaugural Austin one, which was really great.
Oh, it was a great time. It was an awesome team. It was fun meeting the team and Jack and the girls and everyone a part of what you guys are doing.
Yeah. And to date, I mean, basically, except for maybe a handful of customers, every single one of our customers has come through inbound. And so we are just now starting to do some of the, outbound stuff, some of the more like traditional sales methodologies. But we've been really fortunate to really invest and be good at this inbound marketing.
And so when you talk about inbound, you had some of these like big assets, the User Onboarding Academy and some of these other, things. Were you like spending a ton of effort on SEO and actually trying to rank, or is it like, hey, we're going to create some of these assets, we're going to build a good product, most of this is going to be word of mouth? Like, was it that?
Yeah, we really focused on just like really high quality content and topics that nobody was talking about and giving a very informed and unique angle on it. I think so. The Onboarding Academy, for instance, like we didn't spend a whole lot of time focusing on SEO in the early days. We really focused on like understanding the problem, putting together unique research that was out there. Nobody was really consolidating a lot of the best practices. And so just by bringing them together, and then we looped in people like Josh Porter or Samuel Hulick, like Crystal Higgins, like these different people who were really niche experts in their space. And we got them to write a section of that Onboarding Academy or different assets. And they started lending their expertise to it. And now that community marketing is actually a major part of our go-to-market strategy for content.
Interesting. So what does that look like to like build out and add some structure to like the community marketing? I've never actually heard that term before.
Yeah, it's actually, I had never really thought of it before either. So we hired this woman named Margaret. She's phenomenal. Came to us from Envision, and she essentially ran the same playbook when she was there. And it's so brilliant because, her whole take on it was like, hey, I'm not a designer, but I work at Envision. So I'm just going to ask other people, right? And she's like, but I'm in charge of marketing or in charge of content. She's like, so I'm just going to ask other people to write the blog post for me. And it's brilliant because you get them to share their audience and share their expertise. The article ends up being really high quality, right? Better than if you're sort of a lame or secondhand person writing it or interpreting it. And then you can sort of play with all of these unique different styles, interview styles, firsthand accounts, stories, case studies. And so, it's been a really cool way for us to complement the stuff that's written internally, which we can now be a lot more specific about and curate versus the stuff that's coming from the community, which is kind of pulling it all together into one place.
That's one of those things where it's easier and better. And it's like, wait, I
Yeah.
don't have to write the articles, and they're going to be better than if I stayed up all night writing the articles. So
Yeah.
very cool.
Well, we saw the same thing with the User Onboarding Academy, which is like, oh man, blogs are really hard to keep up, especially if you're a small startup, right? HubSpot says you got to be writing 3 times a week. It's like, if you're a small startup, no way are you going to write 3 times a week. Um, and so at the Onboarding Academy, it's just like, I just wrote the first 3 articles, teased out what the titles were going to be for the next 6, and said, if you want to get the next ones, sign up and put your email in. And it's just way higher converting. You could write it at your own schedule. And then it's evergreen content. It's like you win in every single way.
Amazing. And you get a lot of leads that come in through that.
Yeah.
So you said kind of more recently things are starting to shift as far as marketing and your channels, and I think you guys are adding more sales into the mix, right? Like, how have the channels shifted as of late, and what does that look like to go from just inbound to maybe a little bit more sophisticated sales model?
Yeah, I would say, the thing that I've really come to appreciate over the years is just how strong market forces are. Like 5 years ago when we were getting started, the idea, right? Like if I were to come to you and say, hey, in 5 years, this kid out of HubSpot is going to take your user onboarding experience and kind of own it in a third party tool, you'd be like, no freaking way.
Yeah.
And that was one of the existential challenges we had. And now we've got huge companies. We've got like amazing consumer brands using Appcues. And all of those things make us feel like just in the past couple of years that the market timing is really shifting. People are opening up to this idea, and they need to just compete and move faster and create this personal experience. And so that's why we feel more conviction to say like, okay, cool, we've got an engine that works, but the Microsofts and Googles of the world aren't going to necessarily be reading our blog and sign up for a trial.
Yep.
And so how can we get to them faster? And that's where a great outbound strategy and different types of marketing can really help.
Gotcha.
So those 2 things I think are really tightly aligned for us.
Yeah, I remember when we first, I think, heard about Appcues probably 2 years ago, right around when Proof was starting. We saw it, we really liked it, and we kind of came to JP, co-founder and our CTO. We were like, we got to have this, and he was like, no freaking way. Are you gonna like install this code in the app? It's gonna break everything. We're gonna build it ourselves. And then it was just kind of this like the non-technical people are like, we need it, like we need access, like we don't like what you're building, like we want to go in there and do stuff. And then only, like over the last year, he's kind of been like, okay, like let's try it, like let's figure out like how this thing integrates. And definitely we've seen like a shift culturally too, where I think for us, like we're so much more, we're not gonna build anything that's not our core competency. Everything else will be a third-party tool. And I think a lot of businesses are shifting to that, which sounds like that's opened up a lot of doors for you.
Yeah. Can I ask you actually, why is that? Or why is that mindset shifting? Because I think it is really relevant to how companies now need to think about growth.
I think there's so many more amazing tools out there. Like, 5 years ago, it was like, you guys were just entering the market. And so I don't know. So I just think there's like 10 options for every little thing that you want to do. There's like real companies behind little widgets. I mean, we have a social proof notification that, is pretty simple. And it's like, we've got a whole freaking company like around this one little thing. So I don't know. I wonder if there's just more cool tools in the market right now that actually solve a problem really well. And at the same time, it's like, that means there's so much more competition for us. Like we can't dink around on for a few weeks on like a user onboarding flow. Like it just has to be done because we've got to build our core product as fast as we possibly can.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really the piece that I've started to latch onto too, is it's so competitive now. And if you're working on something that has already been reinvented 3 times before, that's stuff that you're not dedicating to your core product or core competency.
Yeah. I wonder if like just the flexibility of APIs and just integrating code together is like so much more available now. And it's like every tool seems to have deep integrations into what we're doing. And I feel like that's like one of the number one things we look for in software. Like first question is, how flexible is this? Are we going to get locked in? Are we going to go down a road that we don't want to go down? And it seems like that's just more table stakes now to have flexible APIs.
Yeah, although it's always, I feel like history is a pendulum, right? And so I think we're going to a very ecosystem type environment right now, and maybe it'll swing back where everyone is like too many tools, right? All in one.
Yeah, totally. That totally could be. So I want to talk about like moving up market. I was talking with Jack Moberger, so you say his last name, when he was here in Austin, and And he was we were talking about price, we were talking about proof moving up market. And he was saying that now you guys have some customers that are paying, well into the six figures, and you've really made this shift and they're trying to make an even bigger shift. What does that look like for you guys to go up market? I guess what was your pricing? And then how has it looked like shifting into those bigger companies?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we've been really careful about, I've been trying to be really careful about too, is how we talk about enterprise versus SMB. We call it commercial internally. And there's two strategies right out there. When I was at HubSpot, there's the HubSpot versus Marketo, and that's your SMB player versus your enterprise player. I'd say now more and more you start seeing companies that are spanning the gamut, right? They're no longer just an enterprise and SMB player. You look at Shopify, you look at Dropbox, you look at Slack, you look at Intercom. Is like selling $99 deals and also selling 6 or 7 figure deals.
Yep.
And that's the kind of companies that I think are now the future of really product driven companies. And so when we talk about it, we don't really talk about it as a shift. We talk about it as an expansion. So we still have customers paying us, $45 a month or $99 a month. And our lowest published plan on the website is $200 a month, basically.
Okay.
So it goes anywhere from that all the way up to that 6 or 7 figures, and they're using almost exactly the same product. To me, that's the part that's like most exciting.
Yeah.
Is this is the dream of like a truly scalable product company.
So what's the difference then? Because in my mind, I've got some of these limiting beliefs where I'm like, I think our most expensive plan is we got a couple people at $1,000 a month, but most people are at, 129, kind of around there. And then it's like, what's the leap? Like, how do you make that leap past just the inbound self-serve kind of lower ticket SMB market?
Yeah. So we're still trying to figure some of this stuff out. What I would say right now, or what we started to learn, is that the biggest difference is what is true within their organization, or how they can sort of get through organizational dynamics, right? So from a sales motion, if you're a small company and you're the end user and decision maker, you can make the buying decision right then and there. If you are a senior PM and you need to get buy-in and you're trying to buy it for your whole organization, you're probably going to need help, right? Especially if you need to go through legal and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where a salesperson can really help, one of our champions navigate their organization, make a case internally, really evaluate the options and feel like this is going to be the right thing for them. And so that's an area where it's like, okay, cool, we're adding value and we can sort of get value in return. And the second is still organization related, and you're probably doing a lot of these same things, SOC 2 compliance, SSO, two-factor auth, provisioning of permissions and things like that, user roles, all of these check the box enterprisey type features,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really solving organizational challenges, right? Which is, hey, I'm afraid of something going wrong. I want control or transparency into what's happening. And these are all organizational challenges that a small company just doesn't have, because you just have a lot more visibility or less at risk.
Yep.
And so that's when we think about what product features are we building for large organizations. It's almost always, when you think about the difference between enterprise and commercial, it's almost always based along how can we help them as an organization, right? Creating team structures, role permissions, SSO, so that they can work together better.
And for you guys, when you started to land some of these bigger clients, were you kind of pulled into it, as in they came knocking, you started talking with them, you said, okay, we can build single sign-on, if you'll sign up? Or was it more push, this year we're going to land these bigger clients, let's start building out these things and go do that?
Yeah. In the same way that we started out and not building a product until we had some dollars committed, we do the same thing with enterprise too. To the chagrin of our sales team, or sort of begrudging sales team, their whole concept or mindset is I can't sell a deal unless I have these enterprise features. And I was like, just come back to me. It's okay if you lose 5 deals, but try to sell 5 deals,
Yeah.
lose them, and that'll be a good validation that we can figure out how much this is worth, right?
Yeah.
And so they did that. We lost deals, right? And it's okay, cool. Now we know that there's a real market and real appetite for this. But the last thing we'd want to do is invest, 3 months of effort, build all this stuff, and then find out that nobody wants it, right? That's the number one killer in startups, is building something nobody wants.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so as you guys think about continuing, do you continue, or do you want to continue moving up market and continue shifting focus there? Or do you think of it purely as an expansion?
Yeah, we did this really helpful exercise where we mapped out, okay, what does Appcues look like at what does our customer profile, our customer base look like at 100 million in revenue. It's actually a really great exercise. I'd recommend everybody to do it. And you just say like, here's how many customers are going to pay us, $1,000 a month or $5,000 a month. Here's how many are going to pay us 10,000. And we can now just go through and just fill in the percentages once a quarter, my co-founder and I, and just say like, how are we doing towards this? Like, where do we need to invest? Just like you would have a product roadmap or a product blueprint, we have like a customer profile blueprint. And we can say, okay, we're pretty good in this. We feel like just naturally we'll fill this bucket up. It's time to move into the next bucket.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about onboarding. And again, you're kind of the go-to guy in my mind. It's like Jonathan knows onboarding. You know more than that. It's the whole experience layer inside the product. But what are you seeing work really well? What have been some of the experiments you guys have run or seen customers run that have like all companies should be doing this or something like this?
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit. So, oftentimes we're competing against nothing. And so if you don't have anything in there, I would say throw a welcome experience with your founding team or somebody in your company that just has a video or a GIF of them waving and saying, hi, welcome to the product. We're so glad to have you here. And there's a whole lot of psychology principles that you can lean on, right? But that one simple thing takes you 15 minutes and it humanizes your product, right? It gets them to tie an identity of an individual to this cold, dead thing on the other side of a screen. And it actually builds a little bit more momentum and commitment from the end user. If you can take that a step further and tie in information that you collected from the sign-up experience or from a landing page of what they are looking to do, and just saying, hey, welcome to Proof. We hear you're here to improve conversion rate. Get started. Even that little thing, even though you don't change anything about the underlying experience, falls into what's called the commitment and consistency principle, right? Where they signed up because they're trying to improve conversion rate. You now follow that up and say, let's get started on improving that conversion rate. They're much more likely to do that. The last one I would say is think about the new user experience, or sorry, not the new user experience, the invited user experience. Most, especially B2B software companies today, and even B2C, are actually either leaning on viral mechanics or collaborative mechanics. People spend so much time thinking about what's the sign-up experience like, and then they spend zero time thinking about what happens when you invite a new person. I bet 99 out of 100 people, if they go back and look at their invited user experience, there's nothing but the welcome email. And so just kind of building that momentum helps you just have a stickier champion within the organization, and that person is invited for a reason, right? And so help them get what they're trying to get done too, so that they can build brand equity in your company.
Okay. And how important are like the walkthrough where it's, highlight this button and then you're going to do this and then this and walk you through the whole thing? What do you see there? And does that help across the board?
Yeah, I love telling this one story. So we released that when we first released that product, right? Walkthrough. So it was actually, the iteration of it was called Hotspots. And it was like when Slack first launched, you had these hotspots around, right? So we launched Hotspots. And I remember a couple months into launching that feature, I kept getting this email. I put in this limiter of it, right? So you can only have 5 hotspots on the page. To me, that was like plenty. I was like, nobody's going to want more than 5 hotspots on a page. I got this email from this guy from a company called Sod Solutions, right? They sold grass to I forget, contractors, right?
Yeah.
But they sell grass in bulk. Sod Solutions is a great name. And he was like, hey, Jonathan, love the product. I need more hotspots. And I'd be like, okay, here, I'll bump it to 8, right? And he just kept emailing in more hotspots. I need more hotspots. And I bumped it to 10 and bumped it to 14. And then after a point, I was like, okay, cool. We got to hop on a call. I need to figure out why you want more hotspots. And I got on the call thinking I was going to tell him, hey, you don't need more hotspots. And he started out saying, hey, thanks for hopping on the call. My customers love this stuff, right? They are non-technical people who maybe are using a computer, just in the past couple of years. And they also don't have a whole lot of time, right? They're usually doing this after work when I'm not available to give them support. And so this is really helpful to them. And then we recently did this analysis in our data, and we found that, believe it or not, the flows with the the highest completion rate actually are 14 steps long. We look at across our entire base. And all of this to say, we go in, or I went in with this bias that there's an optimal number of steps and an optimal length, because that's how I
Yep.
perceived how I wanted to use software. Um, and really, like that's a shortcoming of what software is doing today. It needs to be more intuitive, more data driven to who that user is, not what the person designing it wants it to be. And so, like, my mom would love a 10-step or 15-step walkthrough on how to set up our router, right?
Yep.
Whereas, like, you and I probably don't want any guidance. We'll figure it out.
Totally. I remember we had this exact same conversation when we were setting up Appcues ourselves. It was like, we're all early adopters, tech people. Like, I get into an app, I'll click out of that instantly, and I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
navigate my way through like a pioneer. And we brought all this bias in, and then we realized like that's not who most people are. Like, we are an incredibly biased section of like the tech community who just want to do
Yeah.
everything ourselves. And yeah, as we kind of launched it, I was telling you before, I think we saw people were like 73% more likely to set up our first notification if they went through the whole walkthrough. And that just blew my mind. Because again, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this looks cool. It looks like what software companies should do. But personally, I wouldn't go through this flow. But then
Yeah.
everybody loved it.
Dude, we're going to have you on a case study pretty soon.
Yeah, man. Dude, totally. Last one I want to ask about, what about checklists? So I saw you guys released checklists, kind of checklists as a service. And you were talking about how, hey, the data is showing that this is working. What kind of data have you seen and results have you seen from having a checklist?
Yeah, so the checklist data is still early, so we're still analyzing it. We're seeing across the board roughly about a 20% lift in people who complete a flows in terms of end user retention. So it's across all of our different patterns. And so, especially if it's in your first session, right? If you see an Appcues experience in your first session, I think it's even higher. It's like 24% retention rate, higher than if you never see anything at all.
Interesting.
And the checklist is one of those features that people are they love it. End users seem to love it because it's very opt-in. And then also sort of feeds into your like completionist, and it's clear. Right? It's clear what you need to do. I think in the same way, like the patterns that Proof puts together, it's like it plays into your excitement around it. There's sort of a randomness factor to it. But it's also really clear what you're seeing and what you're getting.
Yeah.
And I think all of those like principles, when we think about like user psychology as we're using products, like really help you drive action and help people like find what they're looking for quickly.
Yeah. No, I do love hopping in and having a good checklist. Like, I'm just filling it out, even if I don't even know like what it's for. Or I signed up for readme.io yesterday. We were going to host some help docs there. And it's funny, I was kind of going through just setting it all up, and I'm like uploading the favicon, and then I got to the integrations page, and it had all these integrations that like, it was like put in your segment ID and put in your Google Analytics and your verification. And I didn't even know what we were going to do with all this, but I'm instantly like filling every little box with like the integration ID. And it's like, I don't need to be doing this, but it felt really good to just go in and like get some momentum in a product and feel like, okay, like we have the tools, like we are hooking up to them the way that they expect. I think that's like the same thing with checklists. Like, give them something to do where they feel like they're getting momentum and they're able to like make progress.
Yeah, I'm super excited for us to continue to expand on this in the same way that people have been hacking our core product. There's a lot of research around like learning theory, and checklist is one of those things. But we see people starting to use it for not just that new user experience, but okay, cool, you've gone from a newbie to a basic user. How can we take you from a basic to advanced, right, or power user? I'm sure there are a lot of things within Proof that are like, oh, maybe I don't want people to know about this in their first 30 days, but like if you've been using it for a couple of months, like you should really know about this stuff. And how can you create like a new learning experience for them later on?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. All right, shifting into one question before we go into the salty 6, which is 6 rapid fire questions. But you yourself, you guys are growing really quickly. As a CEO, how do you keep leveling up? How do you keep advancing? How do you kind of think about your own personal development through all these different phases?
Yeah, that is like really, really hard, to be honest. I think it's the hardest part of the job is that it changes every 3 months. And the second you get good at something, you've got to give it up. I lean on a lot of other people in my network here in Boston. It's been really great to have people who I'm close to and feel like they've gone through challenges, thankfully, a couple of years ahead of what I have. I'm reading incessantly. I'm a huge podcast or audiobook person, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
What speed do you listen to them on? Your single speed?
Well, it depends on the book. If it's for pleasure, like if it's a science fiction book, I'll read it at 1 or 1.5. All business books basically at 2x.
Yep, I'm with you, man. I can't even go back to 1 anymore.
Yeah, you get used to the chipmunk in your ear after a
And then
while.
like people will like get into my car or something. I'll like listen to an audiobook and it'll like turn on for a little bit, and they're like, "What was that?" And I'm like, I can hear it totally fine, but they can't understand a word. But your brain catches up to it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think those are great sources. We're also starting. We just hired our first VPs, and I feel like just being around other people who've run a couple plays at a previous company, I can see how they're thinking and how they're processing,
Yep.
and start adapting my style in the same way. So
Yep.
yeah, surrounding myself with information as much as I can.
That makes sense. All right, man. Well, we're heading into the salty six. This is my favorite part of the show. 6 rapid fire questions to get to know you better. So, it's question number 1: what do you do for fun outside of building user experiences?
Ooh. I recently got married in October. So spending a lot of time with my wife. We travel here every once in a while here and there, and we just moved apartments. So my for fun is putting together IKEA furniture.
Oh my gosh, man! It just takes forever, but it feels
Yeah.
good. Now, do you throw away the instructions, or do you actually like read those?
Oh, I absolutely throw away the instructions and try to put it together. I have a pretty high hit rate. Um,
That's me. That's me too. Okay. Do you have a morning routine, and if so, what is it?
yeah. So I wake up in the morning, actually make the bed, which is a new habit that I've been doing for the past couple of months. Um, I'll usually throw on like an audiobook or some Drake, and then brush my teeth. Always have coffee. I almost always make it myself, and then I get started with my day.
Okay. Question number 3: how do you focus during the day with everything coming at you? Do you have strategies or tips about how to get deep work done?
Yeah. So if I really need to get deep work done, I'll just work from home. I'll be doing that this afternoon. Noise canceling headphones, huge help. And if I want to be really extreme, I'll actually put earplugs under the noise canceling
Oh
headphones just
wow,
to drown out all the silence.
that's awesome. Very cool. Number 4: what's a book that has impacted you deeply in the last few years?
Ooh. Um, let's see. I feel like it's always just like the last book that I've been reading. I just finished Blue Ocean Strategy, which I thought was really good. I would say actually Powerful by Patty McCord. That's probably one
Okay,
that I read recently that I thought was just really, really great.
I haven't even heard of that. What's that about?
It talks about, so she was head of culture at Netflix, and it talks about culture and team building. The one quote that I just like love and took away is we talk a lot about empowerment. Right, companies are trying to empower people, and what's funny, she said that people walk in the door with all the power in the world, right? They're outside of the office, they already are powerful. When they walk into the office, companies take that power
Hmm.
away. And great cultures, ones that really empower people, are ones that take power away the least.
So, how are you trying to implement that at Appcues?
Yeah, so it's basically like, what are all the processes that get in the way of somebody doing great work, rather than putting in processes that like help people do great work, because that's actually counterintuitive or counterproductive.
Yeah, I think about that. I look out at our team and I'm like, everybody here is so smart and talented. Like, they're all better at their job than me. Like, how can I just get out of their way as much as possible and just like let them run? But it's so easy to like, let strangle people or like add these systems in place that just kind of like throw people from doing their best work. All right, number 5: what's the best purchase you've made recently under 150 bucks?
Ooh, under 150 bucks. Um, I love this. So I bought this app um, for my computer. It's called Shoddy. It's a little piece of software. If you take a lot of screenshots on your computer, it actually just saves a screenshot right on your desktop, and it's really, really handy. Probably saves me, I don't know, 100 hours a year or something like that, just like a stupid amount of time. Um, we're always taking screenshots of user experiences that we see in the wild. And so this little thing helps me like keep them all organized. It syncs it directly to
Cool.
Dropbox. Um, yeah,
Cool. It's
I think it's $13.
SHOTTY.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Oh man, I take probably 200 screenshots a day. Just send them all over the place. All right, man. Number 6: what's a trait or characteristic that you have that has led to your success today?
Ooh. I'd say like my biggest strength is probably that I'm adaptable. I grew up in Hawaii, moved to Boston, adapted there. Have a degree in journalism, taught myself how to code to pay for school. Became a software engineer, built the product, transitioned to CEO, and that's just a constant iteration of change. Um, And so changing myself as to whatever the situation needs, I think is one of my biggest strengths and a necessity, I would say, for most CEOs.
Do you write any code now?
Uh, no, I am very tempted sometimes, but I'm trying to let the team do their best work. Instead, I'm writing blog posts. I'm making pitch decks.
Yeah.
I'm making Excel sheets here and there, stuff that I never thought I would be doing. But we are.
Very cool, man. Well, Jonathan, this has been hugely helpful, man. I feel like I've got a lot to chew on, a lot I want to go kind of unpack and think about how we can apply here at Proof. And as I told you, before, we just re-signed back up for Appcues this morning to deploy into our new app. So we're excited to get going on that, man. But if people want to find you or follow what you're doing, where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm Hi Jonathan on Twitter. I also have a website, it's jonathan.kim, or you can find me at appcues.com.
All right, perfect, man. Well, thanks so much for being on. We'll see you here soon, and can't wait to get up to Boston and actually meet you in person.
That would be awesome. I'll do the same and go down there for tacos with you.
Oh, man. Tacos on 6th. We'll do it. Very cool. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.